Hi guys, thanks so much for tuning in again with me today on the SHWeddings YouTube channel. It is Monday, which means that I usually do a vlog Monday, and today would definitely be a good day to do one, especially because we had a wedding this past weekend, so I'm still kind of recovering from it. I'm still a little tired, but I actually couldn't think of anything to talk about just because if we're not doing weddings during wedding season, we're doing really boring husband and wife type things, and I honestly couldn't think of anything to talk about. So I was brainstorming last night, for things that would be, still kind of wedding related but fun to talk about. And I came up with the idea of making a video of what would make a good wedding guest. I know that current brides and grooms would like this because it's always good to hear when someone's standing up for you for some issues that you might be having with some of your wedding guests. And then also if anyone just happens to come across this video, hopefully this will give them some pointers for things that they might be doing that they're not aware that they're doing that can actually cause the bride and groom just a little bit extra stress when they are planning their wedding, especially those few last weeks leading up to their big day. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started. I've created some bullet points for what makes a good wedding guest. So if you are interested in hearing what I have to say, stay tuned. Okay guys, let's get started. So the first point I want to make is that as soon as you get your invitation in the mail from the bride and groom, get that RSVP out in the mail as quickly as possible. The next day is even better. I was so relieved to see that when we were getting our RSVPs back for our wedding invitations, that some people were RSVPing that same day or week. And it was just like, it made our life so much easier because we could begin our seating chart. We could kind of get an idea for how many guests were or were not coming. It just made our lives a million times easier. Especially those last 4 weeks when the bride and groom had to do so much as far as little details. They do have to finalize that seating chart, which is a really big project in and of itself. They have to get that final count to their venue. They have to figure out how many of each entree selection they're going to be doing, etc. So that's really difficult on top of all the other little details as far as decor items, DIY projects that they have to pack up, get ready for the big day. So usually because brides and grooms send out, say, the date cards months prior to the wedding date, you should already know by the time you receive your invitation if you can or can't come to the wedding. So just get that out as soon as possible in the mail. Of course, there are extenuating circumstances where you might not know right away if you are able to attend, but just as soon as you find out, get your RSVP in the mail and your bride and groom will definitely thank you for it. Number 2, respect the couple's wishes when it comes to the location of the wedding and the date of the wedding, as well as their policies on kids or no kids. When it comes to these big factors on their wedding day, it truly is the couple's decision. Obviously, they should keep in mind certain things, like if they have other family members getting married around that time, they should reconsider their wedding date if it's going to cause a lot of issues. The location, obviously, if you have a lot of elderly guests that really want to be at your wedding, you might want to keep it in your hometown. But when it comes down to this, the location of the wedding and the season of the wedding really dictates the style of the wedding, and the style of the wedding is of course the bride and groom's decision. So when it comes to all that stuff, just keep in mind that the bride and groom most likely put a lot of thought into those decisions. They didn't just on a whim say, oh, we want to get married in June and we want to have it in Jamaica and all that stuff. It was a lot of time and consideration that went into that decision. So just keep that in mind, that if you don't necessarily agree with it and a location just prevents you from going because it's too far away and the travel costs are too much, simply just decline the invitation. No harm done. If a bride and groom set a location that's going to be farther away, they know that a lot of guests won't be able to make it. So just keep that in mind. Don't go around complaining about the location, saying that it's not fair that you can't go because it's too far away. Just simply decline and say, thank you so much for inviting us, but unfortunately because of the travel involved, we won't be able to make it, and they will completely understand. Now, when it comes to kids or no kids at a wedding, that's also a decision that is not taken lightly when they do make that final call on kids or no kids. Most brides and grooms really think about this a lot, especially if they have a lot of kids in a wedding, but really often what it comes down to is cost. If you have a lot of kids in a wedding, and those costs can really add up because often kids' meals are not that much discounted from the regular adult meal, and that can really add up. So in order to save money and cut back on seating, a couple might decide to not have kids at their reception. So when you are getting that invitation in the mail and it's only addressed to the 2 adults in the family, that most likely will dictate that kids are not allowed. There also might be a notation on the invitation that says something like an adult-only reception. So if that is the case, please don't make a big stink about it. It's just really going to cause the bride and groom extra stress, make them feel extra guilty for a decision that they probably already feel guilty making, but it's just something that works out best for them. So you really do have to respect that, and just if for some reason you can't find a sitter for your child, then just simply once again decline the invitation. just politely state the reason, saying, unfortunately, we couldn't find childcare for that evening, but we really thank you for inviting us and we wish you all the best. Simple as that. Number 3, if the couple are getting married away from where they are currently living, or even if they are getting married in their hometown, it's often the best, if you are going to get them an actual gift for their wedding and not cash, to ship the gift to their home before the wedding. And I say this because often the couple will leave for their honeymoon the day after their wedding. The last thing that they want to do is kind of arrange to have gifts sent back to a home or have parents take them home. It just makes things a little bit more difficult. Obviously, it's not a huge deal because they'll just figure it out if they have to, but it just makes things a little bit easier for them if everything is shipped to their home prior to the wedding. It's all there, locked up nice and safe and sound in their apartment or home, and then they're good to go for their honeymoon the next day. 4, going along with RSVPs, don't bring any additional guests to the wedding that were not invited specifically on the invitation. Now that goes for actually RSVPing via mail. Don't write in anyone's name that was not listed on the invitation unless you absolutely are sure, 100% sure, know for a fact that those guests were included in the invitation. If you are really unsure, just go ahead and contact the parents of the bride and groom if you are closer to them. If you are closer to the actual bride and groom themselves, go ahead and send them an email first if you have access to their email address, just because that way they can get back to you on their own time because they're probably really busy and inundated with wedding day details. If you feel like it's okay to give them a call because you're really, really close to them, go ahead and do that. Inquire that way, although most of the time everyone that's invited to the wedding, their name will be specifically printed on the invitation itself. So don't RSVP for any additional guests that are not invited, and at the same token, don't bring any guests to the wedding that are invited. It might seem like, oh, they can just squeeze in, it's totally fine, but it really disrupts the seating chart, and it actually also causes a lot of issues for the venue because they'll have to redo seating, set up additional seating. It really causes a problem when you bring additional guests that were not expected. At the same time, if you are not able to make it very last minute for the wedding, be sure to tell the bride and groom as quickly as possible. If it's a legitimate reason because you have a sudden serious illness that has come on or whatever, there's a death in the family, they will be understanding. It is totally okay. I have known so many situations where people they RSVP'd yes, they didn't let the bride and groom know that they weren't coming because they were so scared that the bride and groom was going to be really mad at them, and that's not the case. Obviously, they would rather know because they have to inform their venue of the updated head count. So, if you can't come to the wedding, let the bride and groom know as quickly as possible. 5, dress appropriately. Try to get a feel for what the wedding style is going to be like. Usually if it's black tie, which barely ever happens these days, but if it is, it'll probably take that in the invitation just because that's not so common anymore. But try not to show up in jeans and a t-shirt. Try to dress up a little bit. For guys, a collared shirt and a tie is highly recommended, even if they're just like casual khaki pants. For girls, a nice cocktail dress would be great. Try to just avoid flip-flops, things like that are really casual. You can always bring a change of shoes if you think that you're going to need to change out of your heels later on in the night. Brides and grooms often these days will also provide flip-flops for their guests because they're going to want people to be dancing the night away, and that's going to be really hard if you are in uncomfortable footwear. So just try to dress appropriately. It is a special occasion. 2 people are getting married, and usually the venue will dictate how you should dress as well. So just keep that in mind when you are getting ready for the wedding day. 6, don't be late for the ceremony, especially if you live in a city. Always budget time for traffic. If you are coming in from out of town that day, make sure that you leave a couple hours early to give yourself plenty of time to get there, get situated, refresh. Make sure that you're on time for the ceremony. It is the most important part of the day. It is the part of the day where the couple is joining together. They've probably put a lot of time and effort into their ceremony, just as much as their reception actually. So make sure that you are on time for the ceremony. If you are late for whatever reason, if there were extenuating circumstances, sneak in as quietly as possible. If the ceremony is in a church, try to enter from the side entrances if at all possible, so that way you're not walking down the center aisle, which can often be distracting. If it's any other location, just sneak in as quietly as possible and take a seat in the back. If there are no empty seats, obviously you will have to stand, but that is the consequence for being late to a ceremony. 7, if it is a child-friendly wedding and your child does act up during the ceremony and or during the reception, be sure to be proactive and remove the child from the area immediately. I know that this sounds really harsh, and trust me, I really do sympathize. I understand. I always try to put myself in the place of a parent when I'm at weddings and children act up and they're crying. It sucks. It really does, because then you have to miss part of the ceremony and reception as well. However, it's very, very disruptive, especially during a ceremony when the child is screaming and crying. Most of the time, people remove the child immediately and it's totally fine. But I have had situations where couples will just take the child out of the main church area into the lobby area, and you can still hear that child screaming. And I know that the bride and groom have made comments to me saying, why didn't they go outside? You know, why couldn't they put the child somewhere else where no one could hear it? It really was disruptive. So I know that it sounds harsh, and trust me, no one really wants to be saying this directly, but it is disturbing. So if you do have a child that does start to cry during the ceremony, get them as far away from the ceremony area as possible. The lobby outside the church is usually not a good bet because we can still hear the child crying. So make sure that you go outside. If it is raining, obviously that's an extenuating circumstance, and if it's cold weather outside, then we'll adapt. If there is a wedding coordinator there, be sure to just go up to them and just say, hi, I have this child, obviously he or she's really cranky. Where's a good place for me to go where it won't be disruptive for this ceremony? Your bride and groom will be so thankful that you did this. So that is my next tip for being a good wedding guest. 8, my final and last tip. One question that I often get from wedding guests is it okay if I have really specific dietary requirements to contact the bride and groom and ask if there will be a meal for me? Now, my answer to this question is yes, as long as you're not going to get huffy with them if they cannot accommodate you. Most of the time they can. These days, maybe it's just the couples that I work with, but my clients are always so accommodating to their guests. So if you just send them an email, I always recommend send them an email because that way they have time to inquire with their venue if they can accommodate you, whether it's a gluten-free meal or if you're not offering a vegetarian meal, which is one of my biggest pet peeves. And it's probably because my husband Josh is vegetarian, but you really should always offer some sort of a meat-free option for your guests or a vegan option or what have you. If you do have like a different, unique dietary requirement, go ahead and email the couple. That way it gives them time to check in with their venue and then they can get back to you on their own time. Whether or not they can accommodate you is really up to them, and just accept whatever decision they have, just because it really could be the caterer's decision. If the caterer cannot accommodate them, it's not really the bride and groom's fault. So if that is the case, for whatever reason, the bride and groom cannot accommodate your dietary requirements, just eat a meal before you come and then snack on bread and salad when you get there. Usually couples will always provide some sort of a side dish, an appetizer, a salad, some bread. You can stock up on that as well as dessert, and you should be fine for the rest of the night. There really is no reason why you should be starving. You could even pack your own snacks. I wouldn't run out and grab a cheeseburger or anything like that. Just kind of plan ahead of time and you should be fine. Okay guys, so those are all my tips for being a good wedding guest. I hope none of them were harsh. I just, from a couple's perspective, you just want your wedding day to go perfectly, and sometimes it's hard when wedding guests don't RSVP or whatever, so I just kind of wanted to throw those things out there. And on the flip side as well, most couples these days, like I said previously, are always looking out for their guests. They really want to ensure that guests have a really good time. They try to provide extra entertainment at the reception so that you're not bored, such as, like a photo booth or games if it's an outdoor wedding, like a picnicky type wedding. They try to give you guys the best meal options possible. They try to provide a whole dessert buffet so that you're not just stuck with wedding cake. They really do try to do things that involve their wedding guests and that really make their guests feel special and appreciated for actually being there. So I just think it's nice to return the favor as a wedding guest to make sure that you RSVP on time, that you dress appropriately, that you don't give them any slack for the decisions that they've made as far as when they're getting married, where they're getting married, what time they're getting married, all that good stuff. So just some things to keep in mind. So I hope that you guys found that useful. If anyone has any comments or wants to start discussion about this topic, please feel free to leave a comment below and I will gladly read them. So yeah, that's it. I hope that you guys found that useful and I will talk to you soon. Bye!